not feeling secure in some things, not having certain confidence, growing up with that, I decided I'm not going to pass that on to my daughter. So if sometimes that just means I got to keep my mouth shut, then that's what I got to do and let her explore and do her thing and figure out certain things that she loves to do.
Welcome everybody to episode number 71 of Connection is Magic. What's up, Zalma? Thank you for showing up as a guest co-host here.
Thank you for having me. Happy to be here.
And we have my man David Hernandez, who is also a fellow podcaster in the building today. The Push Project. Go check that out on all the streaming platforms.
Thank you.
Amazing podcast.
Trying to help people heal.
That's right. What got you into first doing work on yourself, inner exploration?
Just jumping right in, it started with surviving trauma as a kid. My mind always going about somebody come help me, or me knowing that I could identify with other hurting kids. And that just stayed with me my whole life, like always wanting to help people, knowing that I could identify with other people that were hurting. As I grew up, of course, we keep meeting people that are going through similar challenges, and that just gave me more opportunities to kind of connect with other people, help other people grow, learn about myself, constantly learning about myself and doing that personal inventory of how I can be better. And if there's ways that I can communicate, connect with other people better than I have been, then I'm going to continue to look for those kind of things. Life, essentially, is what thrusted me into this field of wanting to help heal people, wanting to help encourage and inspire people to push through challenges in their life.
And that's why you called your podcast that, right? I noticed you out there.
Push Project, that's
right.
Yeah,
I always feel like the way out is through.
Isn't it crazy, though, how scared we get sometimes to just go straight through the thing? It hurts. That's probably why it hurts. We don't want to hurt anymore as a survival mechanism. You can't ignore every step of the way. It's just an irritant. It's like, man, what is this? I can't keep going this way, So we stop and we try to fix it.
Right. Something you and I have in common is we didn't have the cookie cutter father thing.
My father was a drug addict and an alcoholic. My mom and my dad got together at a very young age in high school. Pregnant with me, my mom was 18, my father was 19, so we're just babies having a child, and they're still trying to figure out their life with their dysfunction. My father comes from a line of addicts on his side of the family, alcohol and drugs, and then my mother on her side, there was drug and gambling addiction. So, you have these two young people with their baggage coming together, and it's just, a stew, essentially. A lot of frustration, a lot of disappointment, moments where you don't feel safe. Police are coming to the house looking for your dad, stuff like that. And then my father was physically abusive to me, all the way up until my 12th grade year in high school, and so I endured a lot of that. He passed away when I was 24 of an overdose to heroin. And when that day happened, it wasn't a surprise. I think we kind of were expecting him to die because of his addiction, but it was just a shock that day had finally arrived. I was grown, I was a young adult, I was just finished in college, a couple years out, and I got the call. My mom, was bawling, and she was like, "Hey, Pops, he's gone." And so, that began another chapter. But essentially, that's kind of what all of that reflection of what our childhood was, pushing and fighting through all of these challenges as a kid, trying to figure out who we are in this world, it just kind of culminates. It shaped who I am, and we connected on that as well with the addiction portion, and there was use. And then you lost your father as well, man. And so it's a club that, I wouldn't wish on anybody, but once we're a part of it, it's like, man, it never leaves you,
Yeah, thank you, David. Before he passed, were you kind of already in this self-exploration, as Samson put it before, or did his passing kind of help thrust you into this work?
I mean, I was already exploring and learning and growing, and honestly, faith for me was huge. I'm from San Diego originally, and I went to UCLA, only the second person in my family to ever go to college, right? So it was huge. I felt a lot of responsibility to finish. And so as I was away from home and I'm growing up and I'm getting closer to graduating, I was absolutely growing. I was looking at myself and I was reflecting back on the way that even I had been interacting with my father. Because children in families of addiction, the parent, the kid gets so fixed on forcing that addicted parent to change. I was that kid. I was the oldest of three. I'm getting to senior year, and I just knew I could make my dad change. But at 16, I think was kind of when the pop happened, where I told my dad, I hate you, and I wish you were dead. Because that was the best way I could try to hurt my dad's feelings for what he had caused me and my mom and, my siblings. I had already started, once I moved away, to forgive my father and to realize that the way that I had been approaching that was not the right way. If my father was going to be sober and change his life, I wanted my dad to do it because he knew his kids loved him, and they weren't like just judging him. And so by 21, I had completely shifted the way that I even spoke to my father, because I realized for me, I didn't want to carry that anger and that rage and that hurt any longer. By 21, 22, 23, when my father and I interacted, whether he was coming down off his heroin or not, I would come home and just hug on my dad and love on him. And you know what I mean? And I would just tell him, look, you're going to have to deal with it. I love you, and that's just it. I wanted my father to know that I loved him. That's
incredible that you got that at that age, David. You know what I'm saying? It feels like you should be twice that age by the time you get that level of wisdom. You know what I mean? Like, wow.
When he passed away, too, I really became grateful he and I were able to get to that place, because I saw my younger brother, who was 16, when my father passed. And my brother actually found my father in the house, dead. He was the first one to find my father, OD'd in the bathroom. And my brother was in those stages that I was at 16. I'm going to make Dad change. He's going to know how angry and how disappointed I was. And my brother carried a different response when my father passed away. And I learned instantly in that moment what it is for us when we're able to forgive and let go. Because life is precious, and when we're gone, there's no takebacks, right? We don't get to do things over. I realized I didn't carry the same guilt and shame and hurt and regret that my brother did, because my father and I had mended, and he knew I forgave him. I knew he loved me. He knew I loved him. My brother was like, man, he was torn up. And so I learned so quick, man, what it is and how blessed we are to be able to forgive. Because it's not just about forgiving that other person. It's about us letting go of that weight, So, I'm sorry to go there, like, dive in deep, man.
No, this is what we do.
Yeah, I was going to say, you're in the right place.
It's hard for people to talk about these things sometimes.
But yet there's, I feel like a thirst for it right now.
That's so beautiful that's what you took away. To come back and think, okay, I'm going to love on this person harder. Given the circumstances, it seems so black and white. You're a kid. And here you are trying to present as the parent. On one hand, you have your own needs as a child. It seems like pretty black and white from the outside, and yet you still had all this love in your heart. The fact that you found your way back to that at such a young age, like Samson said, that's incredible. And I feel like that's the unconditional love that we all hear about but don't know how to practice. And the fact that you found your way into that is really, really incredible.
I received that. And it has changed even the way that I began to interact when working with broken families, foster youth, probation youth, and their parents, their caregivers, for 21 years now. And time again, I have an opportunity, yet another opportunity, to help another young person who I still see a piece of me in. Any of us that have survived that trauma of any kind, you can connect with others that are going through it now or that have gone through it. You just know. Like, we've lost a father. We know, we don't even have to say a word. It's just like...
So it's like finding that English-speaking person in a foreign country, man, when you're able to connect with somebody, some of this stuff. And it's like, oh, man, I've been wanting to connect at that level. I want to ask, you're a father now. Right when your child arrived into the world, how present on your mental was, man, I get to do this right?
Yeah. I'm so in love with that little girl. I had my first child at 42 years old. So I have lived, and I've already been through so many things and acquired so much wisdom that I had been thinking about it for a long time already. The lessons that I want to teach my child, the fears, the baggage of my own that I don't want to pass on to my daughter. Like, I want to be the end of that drama and the pain and the trauma, all of that happened for me. I don't want to pass that on. Like, I can be the gatekeeper of that. You know what I'm saying? And at the same time, trying to be mindful of not passing on fears that we have, or even, listen, we're human, right? At the point that we are in our life, there are things we look back and we're like, man, I wish I could have done that. I wish I would have done better. And we can carry those things on with us. And that could influence whether or not we believe whether or not it's possible.
Completely.
Right? I don't even want to pass that doubt on to my daughter. That kind of stuff is I'm mindful of is I want her to believe naively that she can do whatever she wants, right? So then that makes me more mindful of even, the stuff that I've been telling myself, oh, you can't do this. Man, I was telling myself I couldn't do this podcast forever.
Yeah.
I know. And I've been on the air in LA in radio for 22 years telling myself silently, you can't do that. You can't.
With everybody telling you got the radio voice, David, and you still felt that way?
and I've actually interviewed tons of people over the years. Hundreds of people. You know what I mean? So this kind of dialogue is natural, but still some voice in my mind would tell me they don't want to hear what you have to say. They don't care about your conversation. Your questions aren't good enough. People aren't going to want to sit down and have dialogue with you and all these things. So even then, you're still carrying, and that's just, me as a child not feeling secure in some things, like not having certain confidence, you know what I mean? And growing up with that, and then that stage with you. I decided I'm not going to pass that on to my daughter, and so if sometimes that just means I got to keep my mouth shut, then that's what I got to do and let her explore and do her thing and figure out certain things that she loves to do. But prior to my father's passing, I definitely started the exploration and growing, and my approach to the world had shifted. When he passed away, I took on a new pride that I never had, which was I'm actually proud to carry on my father's legacy. I wanted people to see my father in me. Whatever bits and pieces he deposited within my life, I wanted people to see that, right? My dad was a talker, by the way. My dad would talk to strangers everywhere, and I definitely carried that along with me. My wife and I traveled to France a few years ago. Man, she'll tell you, I'm talking to strangers in the line at a restaurant, at a coffee shop. We're sitting out at a table. This family sat next to us. We just started chatting and love it because why not? You know what I mean? Why aren't we connecting with people? So anyway, that's what changed for me after my father's passing was the way that this passion that I had to kind of push forward to connect with other people,
How I received that was, the point of being here is to connect. Like everywhere and anywhere. And I know we're on the Connection is Magic podcast, so this is very on brand. But thinking about just what it means to be human, what it means to be here. We're all here, get to Earth with amnesia, don't know where we came from, don't remember anything before it. Don't know where we go when we sleep, We have all these esoteric questions, and that by virtue of that should connect us automatically. Not the English speaking thing when we're in France. Like truly, it's like, oh, you're a human, you're still here, and so am I. Like let's compare notes. Like that's how I feel. I feel like I go like a level deeper with that, and I'm just like, like there are a lot of people that didn't make it to this day, but here we all are, and then you just almost want to like hold on to these people if you're using that lens. And I just love so much that despite so much trauma, it's enough reason to want to shut down. If you wanted to look at it that way, like nobody could fault you for that. And the fact that I feel like it just kind of busted you wide open over and over again. Everything that you've said and everything that you've shared has been, my heart's open. That's what I keep hearing you say in so many words. It's just absolutely amazing. Yeah. And just wanted to say I connect deeply with the, wanting to talk to everybody and wanting to feel connected to everyone because we're all here.
Real talk.
When I first met Samson, I heard him interview another friend of mine on his podcast, and I remember listening to him and just the vulnerability and that honesty and the compassion in his voice. I'm like, that guy right there, I know he and I would have amazing conversation. And Zalma, I actually listened to a previous episode with you and Samson on his podcast as well. I've listened to that one a while back. And I absolutely knew that our conversation would, because there's no like walls up. We're not worried about how we look or, you know what I'm saying? And people judging us. We're well past that. It's more like, how can we bless one another? How can we grow from one another's company? What wisdom can we pass on to one another and be better people? Right? I can't waste time having superficial conversations or interactions with people at this point in my life. It's like, this is what I want to do all the time. I want to connect, and I know I keep using that word. I'm not trying to be, connection is magic. This is 100% on point with what, my focus in life has been, and just the fact that we're able to sit here, chop it up. We have 3 different people conversating right now from 3 different walks of life, totally different life experiences, but still are able to find the common pieces there that connect us. To your point, Zalma, that lived experiences and the wisdom we've acquired, and we can say, wow, you know what? Share with me, what have you learned? I can share with you what I've learned, and we can better one another. We can grow and sharpen each other's tools.
Iron sharpening iron, which I got from you, David, and I love that, man. And you said, I want to make a point, man. You said wisdom. You called it wisdom, but I think another word for it is medicine. It's truly medicine for the soul, man.
Turning something that is nothing into gold, right? Turning it into a valuable, life-changing lesson for our lives and things.
Being able to free ourselves, and free others.
Doesn't that feel healing also? Our ability to help other people, doesn't that feel therapeutic for us as well?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It feels so good.
Absolutely.
It really does.
Yeah.
And me bringing a little mischief in it, I'm like, I like a cheat sheet. Don't we all like a cheat sheet? Can we just be honest?
No.
I'm like, let me know your mistakes and the things that you're learning and what you're going through and what you figured out. So I have some answers to the test. We're always going to recycle lessons. All of us can talk about what it means to surrender, what it means to be open and vulnerable. And we're all going to have different stories.
Amen.
And it's like what you're saying right now, David or Samson, like when we talk and you share things about what you're going through, I'm like, cool. Keeping notes, putting in my back pocket for later. You learn so much from that. It's amazing.
A student of life, man.
Yeah.
Well said.
I mean, there are lots of streams of consciousness, and I feel like it kind of happens as a channel, but I think the one that we use a lot is the idea of megamind, and it's just, my thing is like megamind, God, the universe. It's just this entity that's trying to kill as many birds with one stone at all times. There's 2 people in a conflict, for example. Megamind's trying to teach you a lesson at the same time trying to teach that person a lesson. And it erupts in this way that looks like really inconvenient. But at the end of the day, like both parties like need each other for their individual lessons. And like using that as a lens kind of helps you not personalize the issue so much and feel like, oh, what's going on? Like, this is terrible. How am I going to get out of this? It starts to look like more like a puzzle. Like me and Samson always joke, like, what is Megamind up to? Like, what's the lesson that Megamind's trying to feed me? Like, I'm not going to get roped into this, fight or whatever it is that's going on with this other person. Like, clearly there's a lesson here for me.
What is the lesson in all this, right? Like, what are you up to? What am I supposed to be learning from this, right?
For real. Because anything that it feels challenging, and even I feel like when you're growing into the next version of yourself, there's this weird pocket of time where you're not the new version and you're not the old version and you're just kind of somewhere in between, and it's really uncomfortable. And I'm in that space right now personally, and every day I feel like using this kind of in between lens that I have to make micro decisions to choose into that new being of myself. And I have never been her before, so I still have a lot of questions as I'm choosing into what I think is an upgraded version of myself. It's just very confusing. And I heard something once, this amazing practitioner I was working with, she shared with me the idea of expansion and contraction. And I like that, the idea of always choosing expansion. If you're choosing expansion, you know what that feels like in your body. You know what contraction feels like in your body. And so when you're in these in between, or if you want to be Patti LaBelle and send that salty ass message, like choosing expansion in that moment, you know what that feels like, and using that as your North Star when you're in these in between transitions on your way to the better version of yourself. That's really helped me. Similar to transitioning into your newer version, better version of yourself, you have these baby wings that emerge, and they're not quite strong enough to carry you, but you still have to practice using them. Talking about this idea of like carving a spectrum. So as an example, if you're somebody who needs to be more assertive, because maybe you're used to being somewhat of a doormat, you don't know what that balance looks like at all. So when you first try practicing baby wings of, being assertive, you might be a total jerk. Like maybe you're totally overshooting and people are like, whoa, what's going on with you? And that kind of carves that end of the spectrum. You're like, okay, here's me being a jerk. Here's me not standing up for myself. Like, let me find the middle. And I think trying out how to be assertive in this case is trying out your baby wings, because you truly have no idea what you're doing because you've never been that person before. So we'll talk about using our baby wings when we're like maybe messing some stuff up, but trying something new. And in time, you know, those little wings grow into big wings.
Thank you for sharing that all the way. And I want to say, for everybody here on this episode right now, we've all been seekers, I feel like, and we've done all this work and stuff on ourselves. So that baby wings moment happens. We must have had that moment 15 times, maybe more. It's not like you're one and done with that moment. It happens kind of often if you're on this path. I can understand why people would rather distract themselves maybe than go through that transformation, because it's so painful.
Another thing I'd like to point out too, Zalma, I honor the bravery in you to just be in that unfamiliar, uncomfortable area of growth where you don't know exactly how to do it yet, but you're willing to go through it and grow. And I want to believe we do it because our hope that the reward or whatever comes on the other side of that is worth it, right? But it's still scary to do it. And a lot of us will stop to some point, you know, we'll stop somewhere along the way and we won't see it through. You know, we won't see the baby wings grow to teenager wings, or, you know, adolescent wings, and then they don't stay in the fight long enough. You said baby wings too, and I immediately even thought about my 3-year-old's hands, right? The size of her hands, and she wants to hold her water bottle and her spoon and her teddy bear. You get what I'm saying? But she can't get it all because her hands are small. But she doesn't see it like this. She's just not aware of the fact that what limitations are there. She just knows she wants all these things. Whereas, you know, my hands can grab all that stuff and go because we've just lived through it. We've grown through whatever life brought us. Now we're in a place where we can do these things. When, you know, seeing this 3-year-old is a reminder of those times where we were much more vulnerable and the world was new and scary, and, you know, so many things were about safety and pushing through our own doubts and frustrations. You're in that transitional phase right now in some areas of your life, and it can be scary. I want to encourage you to keep on pushing, because that growth and the lessons learned and, you know, who you are afterwards probably is going to make you so happy that you did it, proud of yourself, and, you know.
And I was closing my eyes, taking in what you're saying, because I'm somebody that processes things maybe too quickly.
Oh, we've
tries to wrangle me sometimes.
Yeah, let's sit with that for a minute so you can actually honor and see what's coming up for you.
If you move too quickly through the micro journeys that are happening within your journey, you don't take inventory of what you're working through, and then you also don't have a certain reverence for yourself and a respect for yourself to be like, okay, I did that, you know, and I can keep going. Because if you have your eye on the prize, wherever you're trying to get to, and you're not checking in, it's like, well, I'm still not there, so what am I doing, you know? So I appreciate you saying that, because you've helped me pause in this moment. Because if you're somebody who's very intuitive, I'm going to guess and say that you are, you can kind of feel out what might happen. And even if it doesn't go down that way, it's really cute to feel like you do know. And it feels good. It's something to hold on to, you know, even if it's a facade. And right now, for the first time in my life, I don't even believe that I think I know what's going to happen. And that is a whole other type of fear that I'm facing. Because like I said, I am intuitive as well. And I'm looking out into the future of my life, and it's blank. And it's not blank because I don't have any hope. It's, well, I mean, the way things went down, it had looked nothing like I thought. And I'm just old enough and somewhat wiser enough to know that I just don't know.
That goes back to Megamind, right?
Yeah, it definitely does. But saying that to break bread, but also wondering if you've ever been in that space, David or Samson, where you felt when you looked out into your future, it truly was uncertain, and not because of one particular aspect, all of it. You're just like, wow, I have no idea what's going to happen in any direction, in any aspect of my life.
Near death, bankruptcy, leaving a 12-year career, at once, you know, I was there. So you just throw your hands up and you're like, I'll surrender. Yeah. And the cool thing I heard is, you know, transformation begins with surrender. We either change by design or we change by disaster.
Oh, Samson, what was that one that used to always tell me? Let go or get dragged.
Yeah, we tend to do that. Hang on and get kicked around.
Yeah. Holding on to the things that were safe for us at one point, the things that are
Yeah.
familiar, even if it's dragging us, it's not healthy for us at all, right? Been there, done that.
So as an adult, 42-year-old guy out there in the world, I'm sure you encounter people who, we're all on our own journey. We all grow at our own pace, obviously. And there's no shame or judgment in that. I was upside down for as long as I needed to be upside down in certain areas. I'm upside down in other areas that I'm still growing and figuring out. But in the areas that I grew and figured out, let's just say, there's somebody who hasn't figured out those areas, right? It's having grace and having appreciation that they haven't figured out those areas yet. You feel me?
Samson, turn this back on you real quick. Don't you feel a level of excitement or like a deep motivation to help others because you've gone through things? Like, are you looking forward to... I mean, that's the impression I get from you, is that your lessons, the lessons that you've learned, the journey that you're on right now, and that healing that you've done up to this point, there's something about it that makes you want to share that with people.
I mean, connection is magic. The root of the podcast, yes, is based in that, yes.
You're asking the question, and I'm thinking about you, and you're living it and walking it right now.
It's a macro idea, and yes, like, if you're tuning in from like Canada, if you're tuning in from wherever, like wherever, but it's macro. But then the day-to-day, the being at the cashier at the store, you know, in Santa Monica, and like encountering somebody that's like a total jerk, or whatever it is, you know, just having more grace at the micro level.
The young woman that you had on as your guest, Felicia Latour, which is how I discovered your podcast.
Just at a random dinner. Yep.
Okay, so, and you just were talking to people and you met people because this is who you are. This is what you do. My impression of you is that you're looking for opportunities to connect with people on a micro level
actually,
too.
Yeah.
Right?
But she wasn't being a jerk that night. We had an amazing conversation. So it's like not apples for apples right there, but yeah.
But the person that you are is driving who you engage with. So I guess everything that we've lived up to this point, everything that I've lived up to this point, it excites me about the opportunity to help somebody else. And that's what I'm saying, is that I'm looking for those people. I'm looking forward to the people who are afraid to do the inner work, because I want to show them it's possible for them. I'll go first. You get what I'm saying? I'll lower my guards first. I'll be vulnerable first to show you, number one, humans can do it. Men can do it. Men who look like me, right, with this skin color, we can do it, right? People who have been through what I've been through, we do it. We talk. We're vulnerable. And now I'm looking for opportunities to help somebody, you know, cross that bridge of self-exploration and inner work and things like that. I have worked with so many people who hated me at the very beginning because they were told they had to work with this counselor. They didn't want to do it, right? We're talking families who were mandated by courts to go to, you know, receive these services, these therapeutic services. And of course they don't want to do it. Of course they're not trying to do the work. But that's kind of what got them in the position that they were in anyway. So now here I come with my life experiences and my passion and my excitement to try to help you heal and see that it's okay to look inside and grow and heal. I'm looking forward to those opportunities. They excite me. I mentioned earlier, I don't want superficial interactions anymore. At this point in my life, I don't want them. So now I can be at a restaurant, at a random place, just in line waiting, and I might spark up a conversation with whoever is in line next to me, and we might get to conversations about family and life. Right before this interview, I was at the park with my daughter. She's running, sliding, you know, swinging, and there's another mother there with her 5-year-old child, and we get to talking and just opening up about motherhood, you know, parenthood, and through the pandemic. I'm always excited to look for those opportunities. So if they're not doing that inner work, I welcome that. I'm looking forward to it. You know what I mean? But we don't know that until we actually start having conversations with people. That's what I'm saying, is that, Samson, you just go out and you talk and you meet strangers.
That's my
You're
thing,
looking
man.
for these opportunities.
If it's like neutral, like what you're describing, all day long, absolutely, right? I'm here for it. But I'm saying...
But the people that are resistant,
people
you're saying?
who, let's say somebody is like just being a jerk or passing on being hateful towards something. But those people are actually the most hurting people. So I think the PhD level of what we're talking about, honestly, is being able to hang with those people without judgment, without, you see what I mean? I aspire to that. I'm not there yet.
Yes.
Yeah, but I'm just being all the way real. I want to get there though. I'm being all the way real. I want to get there.
Well, I feel like what you're saying is like the closer they are into your orbit, the more bothersome these people can be, right? Because it's like the more intertwined they are with your daily life.
Yes.
Got it.
And however you view your dynamic, like if it's a friend or, you know, maybe somebody you like more than that.
Friend, family member, romantic partner. Yeah, all that.
Right. They're kind of more stuck with you. I still feel like what David said applies. If you can kind of bake it into, it could become your baby wings, you know, and try to like practice that, that feeling of like, okay, they are seemingly not receptive to, I don't know, me connecting deeper in this way, but let me try to love them as their inner child and my inner child, because the only reason why you're also being triggered by them is because of your inner child too. So you have a wound there as well. Not you, but generalized, all of us have a wound when we're triggered by something. Exactly. Being empathic, you feel people and you feel their bad day even has nothing to do with you. And since I am a fixer, if I can sense that someone's having a bad day, like it's in my instinct and in my nature to try to heal and help them. But that's not my work all the time. Sometimes my work is to be able to trust myself and my journey to keep my energy where it's at and allow them to figure it out, because maybe I'm taking away a lesson and that's not the right thing to do. But say it's somebody you're actually having to interact with. For me, what I've been trying to practice doing is trying to find my mirror in that person. So I believe that if you are observing an aspect about somebody that you don't like, that aspect that you don't like also lives within you. Otherwise, you would not be able to view it. It wouldn't even be within your frequency. Like your radio transmitter wouldn't be able to receive that signal in the first place if it wasn't the same signal that you're also giving off in your life in some way. So I feel like that's the first step for me, because it helps ground me into like thinking, okay, you have this within you too. Like, go see yourself in this person. Like, you're not that evolved, Zalma. Nice try. You know what I mean?
Wow.
Humans, we all try to make things very black and white. We have a hard time with paradoxes and things that are opposite living in the same space. In the same space, I can be frustrated with my friend who's seemingly less evolved. And I'm being hyperbolic. I feel like that's a mean way of saying this, but just for lack of better words, like, but let's low key, that is why you're irritated. Let's keep it all the way funky. Like low key, you do feel like that person's a little less evolved and you're frustrated by it, because it's like, well, I'm doing the work. Why do I have to deal with this person who's not doing the work?
That is a thought. Yeah, that's some real shit. I do.
Low key, that is how you feel. Nobody wants to admit it, and not even me. I don't feel good saying that, but if I'm really thinking about it, I might color it differently, but that really is what it is.
You put that obligation on them. It's weird, but really, what right do we have? We don't have a right to put that obligation on somebody, because then we don't know what they have to go through, like Megamind, God, universe. They might have to learn a few things right where they are. And then we're intervening almost like playing God. Like, no, you got to get this now. Maybe they got to have 2 more chapters or 3 more chapters of life that are very important, that are development. And I'm sitting here like, no, you got to get this now.
I think holding space for all of it to exist in a moment. So your frustration with them, you realizing the mirror that you have with that person and realizing that's within you. And also trying to fight the urge to, either wrong them or help make them right, or whatever it is that you're trying to possess in that situation. Like, all of it has to live together, because I think that is the truth. Like, all of those things.
You know what, dude? You're really touching on something right now, right? I'm not a jerk very often. You guys know me. I'm a nice enough guy. But, like, let's just say I've had a hell of a week, and then maybe I'm a jerk to somebody. And even though me being a jerk is seldom, more so, I think, than a lot, maybe I still hate that it happens seldomly. I want to never be there, and you're triggering me because you're there. Yeah. Something like that. We're going to keep it all the way funky, as Zalma says, right?
That's really good, though. That's true, because maybe it's not even something that is, like, living within you in that moment, but maybe it's, like, your subconscious mind is, like, I beat myself up whenever I did that, and this person's just freely being a jerk. Like, how dare they? You should punish yourself. You're being a jerk.
I worked my ass off to not go there, I guess. And I'm like, wait, why aren't you working? Why isn't it bothering you that you're being a jerk right now? Why aren't you working your ass off to not be a jerk? Like, real shit.
Right. Yeah. Oh, I feel that. Okay. I feel that. I have that inside of me too, for sure. Like, damn, how dare you? And now I'm going to have to go to therapy and talk about you who doesn't go to therapy. Pay my therapy bill.
Right. It is frustrating, you know, and sometimes I think being okay with, you know, the letting go and saying, you know what, we're not, like you said, like Zalma said, we're not on the same radio wave, you know, we're not on the same radio frequency. And so we're not in the same chapter. We're not even in the same book. I got to go do me and you got to go do you. And as much as it hurts to accept that, it might be more frustrating to stay and get dragged, right, instead of just letting go. But I love it because I think we've all been there, right? Just holding on to stuff or people that are like not benefiting us, and then frustrated that we seem to be putting more effort into something than the other person. Zalma, too, you had mentioned, you know, going to therapy and like talking about this person, and it's just, you know, how much emotional space we give somebody even after they're gone.
Living in our head rent free, they
and
say,
like,
right? They're living in our head
rent free.
Yes.
I've been divorced one time before, so you know, you want to talk about one of those moments where you just were like, what am I doing with my life at this point? You know, so many different thoughts. And then that was actually for 2010, the first time I personally went to see a therapist for me. And I remember the first day I told the guy, my wife just left me 10 years, was with one woman, gave her everything, and she just left. I'm not here to talk about my marriage. I'm here to find out what's wrong with me, right? That the love of my life would leave. And that was where I wanted to focus. But then you find out as you explore, it's not always you. It's not all you, right? We're not the ones that are always at fault. The other person had work to do on themselves that they just weren't doing. That crossroad eventually came, and it hit hard. My first wife was black. I remember after that, I was like, never again. I'm not dating another black woman. I'm done. Right? It's just not going to work. It's not happening. And that's what I told myself. I had to heal. I had to realize, no, bro, you're just, you know, you're holding on to this hurt and betrayal of one person, which cannot dictate what the rest of your life is going to look like. At some point, I had to let that go, and I let her go. I forgave her to free myself. I feel like that's kind of related to, you know, what we're talking about right now, and that we can be doing the work, and we can hope so hard that the other person that we love so much, that we want so much to be in our lives, are going to do it, or even our work kind of rubs off on them. They see what we're doing, so they feel inspired to start growing, and it just doesn't work out that way. And so in that regard, I've had to let go of people that just, we were missing each other. We were like, you know, passersby in the night, going completely different directions, and it stung and it hurt, and it stayed with me for a while. And some questions just go unanswered, and you have to just be like, I'm okay with not having all the answers for everything. Because, you know, even if I get the answer, I don't know that the answer is going to be good enough for me, you know, to make me feel better about it.
Ooh.
Yeah.
David, you said something I think really big just now. Can you even handle
Sometimes
the answer?
Don't, you know, or it's just not good enough, right? It's just like, that's their answer. That's your response. Like, that's it. Like, there's nothing deeper. And that's it. And they're like, yeah.
But like, that's what I'm saying. Like, who are we to play God? Maybe they got 2-3 more life chapters to go, you know, figure that out. You know?
Exactly. We do have to take care of home base, meaning us first, and our growth and our healing before we can worry about what anybody else is doing. And trying to change somebody else, you know, I don't know if that's where we were going with this or not. But
I promise you, the people listening have tried to change other people, David.
I've been there.
Yeah.
You quietly hope that the way that you live, or the responses, or the way that you talk to a person is going to influence the way that they talk back to you. I've been there, quietly hoping that the way that I interact with a person is going to change them into my image of what I think they should be. Just life just does not work like that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, David, I feel like you're so full of like unconditional love and a real understanding of surrendering. I want to be more like
Not by
you.
choice sometimes, though. You know, Samson, that quote you mentioned earlier about we can learn by, what was it?
Design or disaster. Yeah.
Yes,
So good.
disaster. Let's put an emphasis on the disaster part. You know what I mean? There are lessons that I learned that I wasn't trying to learn. I wasn't trying to be divorced. I wasn't trying to be left by a wife. I don't know if I shared this before, but, you know, I used to be a foster parent. of a teenage young man who I used to work with as a counselor. And I worked with him for 3.5 years, fell in love with him and his family. I decided to open up my home to him. And he just didn't know how to receive even the love that I was given, because he had grown up in the system, time and time again, being disappointed and hurt by others, to the point where he didn't even know what love really, really looked like, or felt like, or sounded like. So when I was giving it to him, he didn't know how to receive it. So he fought it. He fought it to the point where he had to leave my home after a year and a half for so many reasons. 2.5 years after that, he was shot and killed in a drive-by shooting. And that happened around the same year that happened, 2011. And I was still healing from a wife who left me. And then some things changed in my career. I had a really good position here at a radio station. I was music director and loved it. And absolutely, I was doing that for 9.5 years. And that changed, and that went away, right? And so my foundation literally was destroyed, right? The disaster piece, without any say-so from my part. I didn't want any of that. But boy, did that teach me some stuff about who I was, how I was going to navigate through the world. That taught me a lot. And sometimes disaster probably is...
As you shared.
Oh, I don't want to say it's necessary, man, but it's going to happen. We remember all of these things too, all of us. Like, we remember the hurtful times of our life. And a lot of times that's what fuels the lesson, that hurt from whatever the negative thing happened. It fuels it's like a catalyst to, like, pushes us forward to just learn what we're supposed to be learning from all of this. Like, what in the world are you trying to teach me right now? What am I supposed to be getting from this? Not just why am I going through this, but all right, you got my attention. What am I supposed to be learning in this moment, in this space? And then making that decision of, I got to be better somehow after this. I got to learn something that's going to help me be better after this. So, we remember the hurt and the sadness and the
that stuff used well, though. It purifies you in the fire, bro. Purified in the fire. Yeah. You get to hopefully hold space for others who may be in a similar place, man. And that becomes a gift, because it's like, we didn't give up. We've all been in some dark ass places and we didn't give up. And I'm like, man, maybe somebody going through the darkest chapter, man, maybe they're about to give up. And it's like, man, if you see that light in that one person's life, it makes it all worth it.
Samson or Zalma, do you remember a time in your life where you were looking for that person that, like, man, I just need somebody to, like, come and let me lean on them a little bit, or that person that planted some seed in you that gave you hope that you still hold on to today? I just remember being a kid, and I'm the oldest of three. I'm going through what I went through with my father and my mother. And I remember quietly wishing and talking to God about, hey, can I just have a big brother? Can I have somebody to protect me? I don't want to be the one that protects everybody else.
Yes.
All the time. And through my childhood, I'm looking and hoping quietly. It's not like I went around telling people, hey, can you be like my big brother type of person? But every once in a while, somebody said something. I remember this professor who had said something my final year in college, and it changed my life in that moment. I remember another mentor that I had, and this all happened my final year of college, who said something to me, and I never let it go, because it just changed me in that moment. And it gave me even a little seed of hope that allowed me to just hold on, through some of the toughest times, because it helped me believe that there was something more that I had to give to the world and things like that. But, little things like that, where maybe somebody said something to us and we're like, man, I really am glad that they said that, or whatever it was. And I asked that because I think it's really important that we have those, and that as we get older, that we are that for other people. I mean, Samson, when you talked about other people who are probably going through dark times right now, I thought about that now, that's what we're trying to be. The three of us, it sounds like, are trying to be that for other people.
Reflecting a little bit back on that question, can I say there's multiple? Honestly, man, my uncle who just passed. Thank you.
Sorry about that.
Appreciate that. Yeah. I was out of control, lost my dad, no surprise. I was like hanging out with the wrong crowd. I got arrested at 14 years old. And like, he just saw where my life was going, dude. And he opened up his home to me and took me in, and who knows what he saved me from, right? That's the crazy thing. I just know I was not in the right frame of mind, right? So Yeah, thank God for him, man. You know, thank God. And he did it. What's crazy is he did it twice. When I shared earlier about my whole life crashing, near death, loss of career, all these things, and stayed with him for about 5 months or so. It allowed me to reset and figure out which way was up from down. And so, yeah, man, shout out Uncle Joe. I know he's around somewhere, man. Shout out Uncle Joe. So.
I think mine would be my dad passed in 2017. So I'm part of the club with you guys.
Yeah, sorry to hear
Thank you. But a girlfriend of mine, both parents are passed. She's a jeweler. She gave me a necklace with my dad's birthstone on it. And man, she said, she gives me the necklace. Of course, I'm crying and I'm thanking her. And she said, your life is going to feel different from now on, but that's okay.
Wow.
And I was still in the thick of it, so I didn't really know what that meant. I was kind of still in that phase where, at least for me, it felt like it wasn't real, we'd done the funeral and the memorial service and all these things, but even still, I was like, what just happened, And I just gotten back from LA. I was in Cleveland for like a month. And so when she said that, I knew something special had just been said to me. I just didn't understand what that fully meant. And I found throughout my grieving process, even to this day, his 5-year anniversary since his passing just was on Sunday. And it was super emotional this go for whatever reasons, why we all know grief is not linear. And I still find myself thinking of that sentence, that it's so true. It's like I definitely changed. It was such a little thing that she said that encapsulated such a big feeling. You guys feel what she's talking about in that, right?
Absolutely. I mean, I got emotional even hearing you say it, thinking about my father, because, good Lord, was it 21, 22 years or so since he passed? It still rings true that life has never been the same. Never. Because I think about him all the time. You're always going to think about, Samson probably knows this too. There's just so many huge life events where you would I'd love for my father to share this. Mm-hmm. And the fact is that he won't be here in the flesh to see these things in our lives, but it just absolutely rings true for me as well. Even hearing you say that, putting those words to what I've been living for so long, it's never been the same. And you find those bits and pieces of that encouragement from people. I love that. It sounds like your friend, she just understood loss also, for her to be able to say it that way. I got emotional, man, thinking about your friend telling you that, but also how that rings true for me even this long after. Mm-hmm. So, yeah. Welcome to the club.
I know, right? Club nobody wants to be in.
So one interesting thing that I know about the both of you that you guys share in common, David was in radio. You were wanting to have deeper conversations, and then the relatability for Zalma is she's a music artist, an amazing music artist, singer, producer, all that. And she is unique. She's doing cool shit, forgive my language. And so she's had experiences in the past where people have tried to put her in a lane that wasn't truly her most authentic self. So I wanted you guys to dialogue. To me, those experiences are semi-relatable.
There is the pressure to entertain in radio. It's not always the popular move to make people think and get too deep. In radio, they say music is the star. Well, they say that, but it's a type of music that maybe people, I don't know if everybody or not, wants to listen to something that is always going to make them sad or always going to try to make them deep in thought. They want to entertain them and just get them through their morning or afternoon traffic. And then, throughout the years, we would have people come in and talk and dialogue and have conversations. I was over the typical artist interviews where all you talk about is what's your recording process, so tell us about the new music, or you got any tours coming up, or do you like to write the song first without the music, or do you need the music first to write the lyrics? You get the same generic questions just coming and coming. But I'm like, wait, what about this human being right here? Let's learn more about this human being. What did you draw from What inspired the music? What did you overcome in your life? What made you who you are? Was there a time where you felt like your music wasn't enough, wasn't going to make it? And how did you push through all that? They just weren't asking those kind of questions, you know? And I realized that in that, I needed to create a space where I could ask those questions of people, because it wasn't happening that I was a part of. And I've been at the radio station now for 22 and a half years. And so it's like, there's got to be more, you know, there's just got to be more to this. And so that's one of the driving forces that fueled me finally just saying, look, man, I got to create some space for me and do this, you know, the way that I would like it to be done, the way that facilitates these kind of conversations. And I know people are having these conversations because off of radio, I'm counseling people. We're talking about tough things in life. I'm inspiring them, helping people discover what makes them great, or, you know, just to hope in life again, and mending family relationships or just relationships in general, helping people trust again. And those kind of conversations were not being had on radio. And I'm like, why not? You know, there's so many people need these other conversations. Somebody's got to create that space for this dialogue to happen more often, you know? And so I would imagine in the songwriting process too, what you choose to say. Matter of fact, my first wife was a recording artist. I got to see behind the scenes all the time. Creators, that's one thing they're not ever going to stop, is creating. You can write lyrics that are just on the superficial level, or you can write lyrics that actually, you know, sink into somebody's soul a little bit differently, right? And leave them different and better maybe than before they heard your song. So I mean, I don't want to put words into your mouth, Zalma, but I would imagine that you know, you coming from that creative space, that you have that drive in you, that you just, like, if you get inspiration to write something down or create, or you've started something and it's burning within you to finish the piece, because that's just that's like who you are. That, you know, I don't know, like, you tell me, because I don't want to assume.
I don't even know where to begin with this. I mean, there's so many layers. Like, okay. On one hand, back to the whole Megamind thing, I can see that I attracted the situations that I needed. I attracted these places where I was misunderstood and that I wasn't being seen or heard or, you know, tricked. I know it's the quintessential artist story, and that might also have to do with like why I absorbed that, just because that's what you hear about. Even before I took it on professionally, you know, all those VH1 behind the scenes stories that when I was even 10 years old. So I've been inheriting this artist narrative, this artist struggle is going to get screwed over narrative for the longest. So could be a bit of that, and it could be a bit of just my own personal wound. I have an abandonment wound. I have a fear of abandonment for sure. I have a fear of the other shoe dropping at some point. That's been a story throughout my life. Things seem safe and then suddenly they're not. So that's my disclaimer before you get into this all the way. Like, I see how I created this, first and foremost. Back to the idea of connection. I believe connection belongs everywhere. And the issue that I've seen in the music industry, at least with my journey, is I'm a very unconventional person, and I'm not the first, and I know I won't be the last. But for some reason, there's this weird thing that happens when you do business, where we all take on that it's just business mentality. And I don't agree with that, because I still think connection belongs in business. I believe that business is very spiritual. You have emotional, vibrational beings conducting this weird thing called business, as they've coined the word. And yet, for some reason, emotions aren't allowed in business. It just doesn't make sense. Like, based off of what has happened to you in the past and how you received those experiences and the trauma you received from it, you're going to curtail your contract to say or not say certain things. So it never made sense to me that I couldn't show up as emotionally as I always was and am still. The people that were seeking me out, the behind the scenes people, like what they were seeking me out for was the essence of all of us. It's my emotions, and it's the way that I'm being introspective and how I'm making this music. And yet it felt like that was the thing they wanted to extract away from me so that we could do business. So, and there's this thing that I really do feel like artists are totally glorified, but not supported in the mental health space. I think that conversation has just scratched the surface now. But for as long as I've been in this, which feels like a long time, it was never that way. It was like, cool. Keep doing that thing that you're doing, but also, can you hurry up? Or can you not do it in that way? It's like, okay, well, you have to pick, because how I am is what is allowing this music to be what it is. My issue, and the reason why I left music for 2 years, was because I felt like I wasn't allowed to be who I really was. I just couldn't see really myself and anybody else that was doing what I wanted to be doing, because I believed that they were giving up a part of themselves that I thought I wasn't willing to give up. And it's not to put anybody on blast, because essentially I'm just saying everyone I know is giving up a part of themselves. I don't feel like that's fully true, but at the time, that's how it appeared to me, because I was in these situations that I felt like I had to abandon self in to survive. And we all know that that's a trap.
Because of these past experiences you've had, there could be a little bit of putting the foot on the brake and the gas, which is natural. I think a lot of people can relate to that after they've had, situations disappoint them or not turn out how they thought they were going to turn out, etc. Can you speak to just being a bit guarded, I guess, which is totally understandable. There's, no judgment. I'm bringing this up because I think it's relatable to many.
So I feel there's two versions of the brake and the gas pedal thing happening for me personally. On one hand, it's the in-between transition thing that we were talking about before, where I'm like, okay, I've recovered a lot of this, like the trauma of the industry. And I don't think a lot of people talk about that. It's just being in the industry in general, like the disappointment and all of the labor and no payout after years, it does wear on you. And I think that is a little bit of a...
And David knows it well because you were married to an artist, right, David?
Her album, she completed her album. She submitted her album and they shelved it for 4 years. The album was done, submitted to the record label, and they put it on the shelf for 4 years. She's getting depressed and, and at the time I wasn't managing her, but that's actually why I started to, was because nobody was talking. I'm like, how could they do this? By the time that record came out, it may have been new to the world. It was so old to us. We've been sitting with that for at least 5 years, right? Wow. Anyway, it's just, you want to talk about how traumatic it is. Yeah, I saw that firsthand for sure. It's just the business side of it. It thwarts the creative, the artistic side, the artistic expression side so often. It's just ridiculous, So yeah, I have a special set of frustrations with the industry as well.
I'm going to tie this in with what Zalma said earlier. I think that the new industry has its baby wings on right now. Would you agree? Like, something is emerging.
Yes.
We don't know what yet.
I definitely feel that way, but I also wonder if I'm seeing it because I started asking the universe to see a different side. I was like, okay, if I'm going to be in this industry, and I feel like as much as I say I quit for those 2 years, that was the most amount of time that I've ever gone without even desiring to do music. I truly didn't even feel like dealing with it. I didn't feel like talking about it. But I've had moments where I'm like, I quit, and for a week or whatever, and then I get back into it. But so far, the common theme with all of the times that I've wanted to put music down is it's always followed me. It's always an opportunity comes, someone reaches out, I find myself back in it. So I told the universe, look, if I'm supposed to do this, which I think I am, show me a different way, because that other shit, that was weird, and I'm not doing that again. I just refuse. So I do feel like, at least for me, I feel like on my side, it's just because I asked. And I feel like I am seeing a different side, more heart-centered people, more people that are kind of like, they go into the industry, do their little thing, and they kind of hop out. And that's kind of who I connect to more. But just real quick, David, talking about that project that was never released for 4 years. I think my feeling on this is that we have heard this story so many times. It's in the way that we hear traumas of humanity, and we kind of we disassociate, and it desensitizes us as to why it's such a big deal. And I just want to break down for 1 second what it actually means to turn in a project and then not have it be released for 4 years. That, it's not just because it's oh, this is the project, it's this. But what went into that is hours of time, so much money, so much preparation, so much vulnerability, tons of wrangling producers wrangling people to get them on the same schedule, to even like record the there is so much that goes into any project, but definitely a music project, that by the time you're turning that thing in, you are exhausted, and your only saving grace is that it's going to come out. And when it doesn't,
it's almost like running a freaking marathon and like being told it's 26.2 miles and getting there and being like, oh, you got another 48 miles to go. It just getting exactly like, you get all that energy and effort was for nothing. You thought you were there.
There are so many comparisons that have to be considered to truly understand and respect, because again, that story is so tired that I don't feel like people really feel the weight of what that means and why it could send somebody into depression.
Thank you for articulating that too, because there might be people listening who haven't spent time in music, right?
And coming back to where we started, for me, with the idea of connection in spaces that feel like you're not supposed to have connection, and it's supposed to be more transactional. The music industry, we all know it's kind of just a crazy place, and I don't want to perpetuate that even in language too much, because I'm in it and I'm trying to make it work for me. So can't say that for too long. But what I've decided for myself, I get to control my neck of the woods. So when I think about having meetings now, and when I think about bringing people on, it's no longer do you like me, it's do I like you.
Beautiful.
That's changed everything for me.
That's the optimal place to be, for sure.
I used to literally go into business partnerships based on one thing. What have you done? What's on your resume?
Yeah.
You couldn't have a worse strategic plan as far as building yourself in the music industry than what have you done? I don't care about what do you stand for? What are your values? What do you like as a human being? Like none of that factored in at all for me. And I ended up crashing and burning time and time again because I wasn't asking myself the right questions.
Thank you for saying that, Samson. See, now I'm all fired up. Look what you've done to me. Because this is something that is relatively new for me. And I know I'm not alone in this, and I'm sure you guys can chime in on everything I'm about to say. I feel like that's been the blueprint. It's who do you know? And even when people are, I hear people around me pitching this way. Oh, it's really dope. Why is it dope? Not actually because it's dope. It's dope because so-and-so did it, and they worked on so-and-so's other shit that you know because they're famous. And that's never worked for me. So why would it work in another setting where I'm looking at management or a label? If you had to get married to this person, because it's essentially what it is, would you want to share space with them so intimately in that way? And if the answer is to a hell no, then that absolutely needs to be the decision that you make about that person, regardless of accolades. We have a connection problem, period. We have an introspection problem. We're not coached, we're not therapized, we're not looking deeply into, where we've been to understand where we're going and understand where other people are coming from, to even fight the argument that business is transactional. This is exactly why business is absolutely not transactional, because the relationship that you're talking about between the radio and the listeners sounds like a trained dynamic that the radio, in this case, I feel like has trained the listeners to just expect that they're going to play what they're familiar with. That's why people go to radio and listen to what they want to listen to, station by station, based off of what it's playing consistently. And anyone not in music that doesn't care about this aspect of the conversation can relate, because you train everybody around you to treat you a certain type of way. And if you can't figure that out, like on a micro level, it's impossible to try to figure it out in these giant systems that we've built. Our life is an extrapolation of the systems that are not working. I just feel like until all of us as individuals start making the tiny tweaks in our life, which is why I was saying I don't agree that business is not spiritual or not worthy of bringing your emotions in on, not bringing your coaching in on, in these meetings. So I just had a meeting the other day, and I told the person I was talking to, hey, let's ditch the formality. I'm not interested. Hope that's not too brash, but this is where I'm coming from. What do you got going on? What are you working on? What are you hoping for?
How was that
received? You can reach out. It was. I feel like people. I've done it a few times, and I feel like people are relieved. It's like, oh, thank God. Here's what I want. you know, I saw you here and I thought you could do this for me. Like, what do you think? I'm like, thank you. Let's move this along. And I think some people could argue that that's transactional, but if you sew that in with like, here's where I'm coming from. Look, I'm having a hard time. Rollout plans and releases feel like fast fashion. From what I've seen, it just feels like very seasonal, get it out, do this, and that just doesn't work for me. So I've had to accept that I'm the kind of artist that I really care about my relationships. My producer and I are like this. Like, we really help each other grow through the process. Like, I'm so enjoying this process, this go around, because I don't feel the pressure that I felt in the past. When I realized this healthy, beautiful relationship that I'm in with my friends, or like I said, my producer, I'm like, why would I then pivot and just have a weird ass transactional relationship with the next person that's going to be close to this orbit? It just doesn't make sense. So like, I really want that deep connection so that when we're in a meeting together and we're trying to figure out how to release this music or whatever it is, that you feel like you have a sense of who I am and you're going to be pitching with the correct like idea of me. So I think it's a worthy fight in all of your spaces to find connection, to fight for connection, and to try to disarm people for connection in that moment. Mm-hmm. Yeah, like, we're such empathic creatures. I know that there's a whole like empath and highly sensitive person sort of like movement in the last 5 years. I think a lot of people are realizing these language that kind of explains their oddities of like how they experience other people around them. And I think that's really beautiful. But I will say, for me personally, I feel like everyone has that quality. Everyone has that super power.
Of other, right?
Yeah. I mean, look, in a society that I feel like encourages disconnection, we still have language that proves that the truth is that we're really connected in ways that we can't even describe. We have a word called vibe.
Right.
So I got a good vibe from that person. Like, sometimes just to be a jerk, I almost want to be like, well, what do you mean by that? What is this vibe you speak of? And then you see people glitch because they're like, I don't know how to explain this vibe. And it's like, well, what do you mean you had a gut feeling? What can you point to it? Like, what part of your stomach was feeling that gut? Like, the fact that it's still showing up in common language that all of us know, and we're somehow okay with that. Like, we're the same culture that says business is business, and yet we'll say we have a gut feeling about something, bro. Like, how does it? That doesn't go together. So the sooner we all get on the same page that we are vibrational, emotional beings, and that we should take that in to everywhere we go, because it's literally baked into us. I feel like we'll have a shot to dismantle all the bullshit that's going on everywhere, in every system, in every industry.
100%. Yeah. There's so many things that are baked in to our society and culture that the Thanksgiving tip, like, I mean, when I was in my teens and my 20s, I was like, yo, Thanksgiving, let's go. And like, I'm a little bit more aware now of like the history and what it really means. It's crazy when we start to like peel back the onion, right? And it's like, oh shit, maybe it's like more convenient just to keep the onion not unpeeled. Like, you know what I mean? People just keep it. No, I don't want to know. Once the wool is off, I'm sorry. There's no putting the toothpaste back in the tube. That's just for me. I know too much. Like, I mean, I know everybody on this episode right now, we all know too much. It's impossible to go back.
But how do you guys deal with that? What's something that you know, and society discourages you from having that knowingness?
We are wired for connection. Connection is like, we're social creatures, so we don't want to break away from the pack. Our internal primitive instincts take over, and we're like, no, if I own this, it's going to push me away from the pack. You're put in this awkward situation. You're like, do I follow my truth? What? Or, you know,
so, or like the fear of the disconnect.
That's a good one.
The pack and numb myself from the truth that's coming from within me. Those are our choices.
Oh, that's a good one.
You know?
So like we might not do some things for fear of disconnect with other people?
Even if it's our truth, we might not own our truth because we're wired for connecting.
Yeah, man.
So that's like a biological thing, Samson,
primitive,
we're talking about.
Primitive.
Right?
We were dead. Like, how many tens of thousands of years, we were dead if we left our pack.
Or got ostracized, right? Because if you were kicked out from the pack,
saber-tooth tiger would end you, or whatever that is. You know? Yeah. All right, guys. I think we covered so much great stuff on this episode. Thank you both for showing up and bringing the real. Zalma, David. Go check out Zalma's music all over the internet, and go check out David's podcast, The Push Project. Amazing podcast. And love you guys.